Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Knowledge course. Today, we'll be exploring an essential topic on our journey towards self-awareness, the 7 centers of the human machine. We refer to the physical body as the human machine because it serves as the vehicle, made up of systems, components, and programs that enables our essence to express itself and function within this third dimension. In today's session, we'll dive into a detailed study of these energy centers. Today we are going to learn which energy centers we have internally, how they work, what energy they consume, where they are located, etc. We are going to know the possibilities that we have as human beings to develop, balance, and regenerate these centers. We will know what functions they fulfill, what is their activity during daily life, and how to save energy. And all this so that we begin to value our energy and learn to use it wisely for our inner development. The centers are energy points that allow the development of various functions of our physical body. We have 7 energy centers, and it is important to clarify that when we speak of centers, we refer to something that belongs to the physical world and therefore to the physical body. This distinction is crucial because it helps us differentiate the centers from the chakras. While the centers, chakras, and churches of wisdom are closely interrelated, they each belong to different aspects of our being. The chakras are connected to the soul, the churches of wisdom to the spirit, and the centers to the physical body. These 7 centers are located within our physical body, aligned along the spine. Now let's take a closer look at each center in detail. The first one is the sexual center. It is located at the level of the coccyx, which is the lowest bone of our spine. The energy that this center manages is our sexual energy, and its function is to create, since our sexual energy is creative. This center has 3 possibilities of creation. We can create through suprasex, through normal sex, or through infrasex. This means that every time we have sex, this center becomes active, and we are creating. And it is the type of sexuality we practice that will determine the kind of creation we will carry out. In the practice of suprasex, which is the practice of superior sexuality that we already taught in topic number 1 of this course, we don't pour out our sexual energy through orgasm and ejaculation, but we channel it through the spinal column. Through this type of sexual practice, we create what we can call the children of light, which are the internal bodies that will allow us to have conscious presence in the different dimensions of nature. On the other hand, if we practice normal sex, engaging in sexuality without wasting sexual energy, that is, without falling into fornication and with the intention of conceiving a child, a unique process occurs. In this practice, the Divine Mother guides the strongest sperm to fertilize the egg without the need to waste the millions of sperm contained in the semen. Through this practice, we create a physical child and fulfill the purpose of reproducing the species. But if we practice infrasex, which is having sex without a transcendental purpose, seeking only the animal pleasure of pouring out our sexual energy through orgasm or ejaculation, we create the ego within us. It is through that practice that we have created and continue to create more and more of those ways of being or psychological defects that have trapped and conditioned our consciousness, keeping us further disconnected from our true essence. That is why it is extremely important that we begin to practice suprasex, to stop creating more ego, and begin to create the existential bodies of the being. The physical sense related to this center is touch, since it is through touch, kisses, and caresses that sexual potency is activated for the practice of suprasex. The psychological defect associated with this center is laziness, as it is responsible for hindering any form of creation within us. The second is the instinctive center. It is located at the height of the sacrum, in our spine. The energy that this center manages is vital energy. This center is responsible for managing all the waters of the microcosm, that is, all the energy that is inside us. Therefore, this center manages the health of the physical body, the reproduction of all our cells, our karma, etc. It has 2 functions, one conscious and one mechanical. Its conscious function is to apprehend, that is, to capture the deep meaning of any situation experienced without storing it in memory. Thus, we will be acting from the wisdom of our consciousness spontaneously, from the present moment, and not as a reaction given by a memory. However, this center manages all the metallic atoms of our mercury, and our ego is found in them. That is why when the emotional center produces a desire, this center takes over it. For this reason, we will say that it fulfills the function of learning, which is given by the memory of the waters, through desire, and it is the mechanical function of this center. The physical sense related to this center is the sense of taste, and the defect related to this center is greed. The third one is the lower emotional center. It's located at the level of the navel, on the spine. The energy that manages this center is our emotional energy. Therefore, its function is feeling positive and negative emotions. Positive emotions are those that originate in our consciousness, such as the desire to help others and true love, which is a higher emotion that will begin to emerge within us as we eliminate those negative emotions that we mistakenly confuse with love, such as sentimentality, lust, and attachment. Negative emotions are those that make us feel pleasure or pain, attraction or rejection. With negative emotions, we fall in love, we feel pleasure, joy, we hate, we feel resentment, etc. We must learn to balance this center because it is the one that manages our fire. The fire in us is that stimulus that we use to carry out all the actions. So if we don't learn to consciously manage this center, we will always continue wasting all its energy on emotions that constantly take us from pleasure to pain, and we will not have the fire or stimulus to do the practices that allow us to awaken our consciousness. The sense related to this center is the sense of smell. Smell activates emotion. You can see how through slow, deep breathing, we calm down when we're emotionally agitated. The defect related to this center is lust, since it is lust that wastes most of our emotional energy in intense emotions that take us from pleasure to pain and from like to dislike. The fourth is the lower intellectual center. It's located at the level of the heart, in the spinal column. The energy it handles is mental energy, and its function is to think, devise, plan, project, and remember. Before doing something, we first plan it. That is why it is said that thoughts are the origin of actions. When we think, even if we don't know it, we are beginning to create. Thus, the quality of our actions is determined by the quality of our thoughts. We must learn to self-observe this center since it wastes a lot of energy with negative thoughts. The best way to think is not to think and to know how to listen to the voice of the heart. When we achieve non-thinking, the wisdom of our inner Father can come to our hearts as intuition, which is pure wisdom. The sense that manages this center is the ear, and the defect is pride. The fifth is the motor center. It is located at the level of the larynx on the spinal column. It manages the motive energy, as this is the center of the movement. It supervises all our actions and words. Its function is to do. This center is totally mechanical when it is managed by the psychological self, causing us to act like automatons, like zombies, mindlessly performing actions without true awareness. We learn to perform a task and repeat the movement so frequently that it becomes automatic, completely bypassing any conscious thought or intention. This is similar to when we first learn to brush our teeth, walk, drive, etc. Over time, these actions become so ingrained that we perform them without any involvement of consciousness. Instead, we carry them out mechanically, often thinking or feeling something entirely unrelated while the body completes the task on autopilot. What's more, we are so mechanized that if we think when this center works, we could even die, for example, when we are driving. This center manages the will, and as long as we have psychological defects, our works will be influenced by them. Therefore, we have goodwill for the ego's words, actions, and omissions. Goodwill for vices, parties, fights, fornications, laziness, etc. And very bad will for the things of the consciousness like meditating, reflecting, eliminating defects, being born spiritually, sacrificing ourselves for humanity, etc. Unfortunately, what we human beings do the most is talk any kind of nonsense, and we almost never say or do useful things, thus clumsily spending the energy of this center. The sense related to this center is sight, and the defect is anger. Those were the first 5 centers. These are the centers that are fallen and unbalanced in us because they are constantly used by the ego to manifest itself and feed on our energy. Now let's look at the centers that are not fallen and that function balanced. They are our 2 higher centers that, when activated, will allow us to self-observe, judge ourselves, make radical changes within us, and access our own inner wisdom. The first of these 2 is the higher emotional center. It is located in the pituitary gland or hypophysis. It manages the energy of consciousness. Its function is to judge and to measure effects. The sense that this center manages is that of self-observation or clairvoyance. In most people, the sense of self-observation, also known as the third eye, has become atrophied due to lack of use. To begin regenerating this sense, we need to start directing our attention inward, focusing on our inner world. By doing so, we can start uncovering the psychological defects that frequently arise within us. These are the root causes of our conflicts and negative reactions. This process requires us to examine ourselves with honesty and rigor, judging our flaws without leniency to truly understand and eliminate them. The defect associated with this center is gluttony, as it reflects our imbalance and our tendency to indulge in extremes. The last one is the higher intellectual center. It is located in the pineal gland. It manages the energy of the pure spirit. Its function is to know. The sense that manages this center is polyvoyance, which will give us the capacity to know it all, as it is the seat of the wisdom of our inner Father. The defect associated to this center is envy, since envy prevents us from seeking and developing our own wisdom, focusing on what others have. Now that we have seen the 7 centers and their respective functions, let's take a moment to discuss the current state of these centers. In most human beings, the centers are unbalanced because very few individuals take a genuine interest in working on themselves. The majority remain unaware of their true nature. This is why it's essential to begin the work of self-discovery by understanding these centers. We must stop wasting our energy, eliminate the defects that drain it, and redirect this energy toward making superior creations in ourselves. We must know that the instinctive center, as a producer of energy, supplies energy to all the lower centers. During the night, while the physical body rests, this center supplies each of the lower centers with the amount of energy necessary to function properly during the following day, and the surplus energy is deposited in the sexual center as it has the most important function, which is to create. When we start the day, each of us finds ourselves with our batteries full, and we begin to spend energy every time we use a center. Each of our thoughts spends the energy of the intellectual center until its initial charge is exhausted. When this charge is completely exhausted, the intellectual center steals energy from the sexual center in order to continue functioning. Each of our words and each of our movements spends energy from the motor center. When its energy reserves are exhausted, it has to steal energy from the sexual center in order to continue working. Each of our emotions in daily life drains energy from the emotional center, and in turn, this steals energy from the sexual center. In turn, the sexual center, in order to work, as it has been plundered throughout the day, has to work with the surplus of the other centers. Conclusion: they don't work with their own energy and nothing new can be created. To make matters worse, very few humans know about suprasex, and when they get to sexual practice, they strive to extract energy or expel it through orgasm, and all energy reserves are extracted for our entertainment. With this ongoing mismanagement of our energies, our energy centers become completely unbalanced. As a result, we lack the energy required to consciously project ourselves into the astral plane. Even more so, we are left without sufficient energy to create, through sexual transmutation, the bodies or vehicles needed for a permanent and conscious presence in the higher dimensions. Now, what can we do to balance the centers? If we are going to balance the centers, we need to start observing them. The second step is to learn to save energy so that the sexual center is not looted. What we need to do is start awakening our sense of self-observation by consistently turning our attention inward. This way, we can recognize the psychological defects that try to express themselves through our centers. To do this, we should pass everything we think, feel, say, and do through a filter of rectitude. Ask yourself, is this true, fair, or beneficial to my being, my conscience, or is it just one of my flaws trying to take control? If it's a defect, it must be eliminated. To balance the centers, we must begin practicing the 4 rights: right thought, right feeling, right speech, and right action. So what is right thinking? When a thought arises, take a moment to reflect. Is this thought coming from my being, or is it coming from a defect? For example, if you notice a thought of worry, pride, criticism, gossip, lust, or anything similar, and recognize it as a defect, you must ask your consciousness to eliminate it. Mentally say, "Divine Mother, eliminate this defect." Then, continue observing yourself. What is right feeling? It involves reflecting on whether the emotion you are experiencing comes from your consciousness or is rooted in a psychological defect. For example, if you feel worried, anxious, fearful, angry, sad, or jealous, it's clear that these emotions don't originate from your being. They come from a defect. Once you recognize this, understand that the defect must be eliminated. What is the right action? It means reflecting on what you are doing and asking yourself, is my conscience guiding this action, or am I acting mechanically? If the action is mechanical, it is not from my being. It comes from a defect and must be eliminated. What is right speech? It involves examining what you are saying and considering, is it true, just, or useful? If it is not, then it is a manifestation of a defect, and it must also be eliminated. If we begin applying this strategy, we will quickly realize that very few of the things we do, say, feel, or think are truly right. We will see that most of our actions are meaningless, that our thoughts rarely serve any useful purpose, that our feelings are often negative, and that we tend to talk excessively. The conclusion? We are faced with failure, but this recognition is the first step toward change. By applying the 4 rights, practicing self-observation and psychological death from moment to moment, we will begin to save energy. And this will allow us, using sex wisely, to create the superior bodies of the being that will allow us to have full representation in all dimensions. That concludes today's topic. Thank you to everyone who joined us. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. We invite you to join us for the next conference, where we will explore the different dimensions of nature and discover where they are located within us. Thank you very much. Until next time.